Now, this story is crazy, guys. And the crazy thing about this story is that this is not the first time I've heard of something like this. I just listened to a story Mr. Ballin told not too long ago, and it's real. It's basically the same as this one. So we're gonna listen to that one after we listen to this one. So if y'all don't want to watch that one, y'all don't have to. But I'm telling you, there's some eye-opening stuff. It's crazy. You know what I'm saying? To think about. But all I can think about in this situation is like just the power of the mind. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like when you go to sleep, dreaming is literally thinking while you're sleeping. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes your dreams can feel so real until you snap out of it. But let's say you never snap out of it one day. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, we got to listen to probably two of the craziest stories I've ever heard. But, hey, y'all go get y'all water, whatever it is y'all doing. Y'all watch my videos. Feel what I'm saying? Come and rock with y'all. Boy. You feel me? I ain't gonna hold y'all for too long. Let's get to it.
Somebody who said that she fell asleep for 12 hours and lived a separate life for 7 years that she now grieves every single day. And she knows that it was real because she brought things back from that life into this life. The person who sent me the story's name is Stacy, and she said that I could use her real name. She said that it was just like any other day. She was absolutely exhausted and drained, and she wanted to take a nap. So she took a nap around 3 p.m. and she set her alarm for 4:30 p.m. But when she woke up after that alarm went off, she was not in her room. She was in some cozy little kitchen. She said pancakes were sizzling on the stove, Fleetwood Mac was playing, and then she turned around and she saw some dark-skinned man walk up to her, smile, and say, "You always space out in the morning, baby." And then he kissed her on the forehead. He then said, "Do you want strawberries or syrup on your pancakes?" And she wanted to scream. She had no idea who this man was, but she said that her mouth just smiled. And she heard her own mouth say, "Syrup and strawberries for me, please, but no strawberries for the kids, just syrup. They don't like strawberries." Stacey has 2 kids in real life, but she's thinking to herself, like, what world am I in right now? And do I have those same 2 kids in this world? And then all of a sudden 3 children run into the room. There's 2 boys and 1 girl, and they came running into the kitchen and they wrapped their arms around her legs, and like they always did, and she knew this somehow. Her brain filled in the blanks like flipping through a photo album that she had never seen but remembered. Oldest name was Octavia, and if you know Stacey, her favorite show is The 100. So Octavia is short for
like with people who do stuff like have stuff like this happen to them. I gotta ask, like, have you been on any like hard drugs? Like, you know what I'm saying? Because I know people be like taking like crazy trips on crazy type of drugs. I never done them type, so I don't know. But just from the stories I heard, I need to know that because this wild.
Ava. This girl was 10 years old. She had freckles and missing teeth. The second oldest was Miles. He was 7 and he had a Batman cape on. She said the youngest one's name was Devin, and he wore 2 different socks all the time. And it was almost like he did this on purpose. He would come and show his mom, and she would tell him to go put the right socks on. And when she would put the right socks on him, he would go and grab another sock that was mismatched, and he would put it on top of the other sock so it would be mismatching again. And then he would laugh at her when she would get upset about it. She said her hands poured juice, cut pancakes, and packed lunches, and everything just felt natural to her. She said that her head didn't know what to do, but that her hands knew what to do, and she knew everybody. She knew her friends, her family, her husband. She also said that she looked completely different. She was a mixed woman wherever she was, and she is a mixed woman in real life, but she just looked different. She was very thin with braids, a septum piercing, and a bunch of tattoos. She said days passed, but they weren't days. They felt real. Time went on. She celebrated birthdays. She got sick. She fought with her husband. Cried in the laundry room. She made love. She yelled, laughed. She went to work. She held her kids as they fell asleep. She was an art teacher. She had 23 kids in her class, and it was room 106. She remembers it specifically. She remembers Miles breaking his arm, the youngest starting kindergarten. She remembers Ava coming home crying because somebody made fun of her freckles. She remembers Devin learning how to ride a bike, and when he finally did it, he yelled, "Yay, Daddy, look, I did it. I can ride a bike." But after 7 years of living this perfect life, she started to notice glitches. Like she would go to the grocery store, and the grocery store would be playing the same song over and over and over again on repeat. The mailman's name was Tom. It was always Tom, but after the 5th year, every time she saw him, his face would change. There was also a door in the basement that they never used, and when she asked her husband about it, he was like, "That's storage," but they had no key for it, nothing. They couldn't open it. She said that after this happened and she asked her husband that, her husband was like, "Are you okay, baby? You've been asking really weird questions lately." And for some reason, she just ignored him, and she walked into the room. And as she sat on her bed, she looked at her closet door, and the door started whispering to to her. And with that same door, she had been hearing muffled crying behind that door recently. And that night, as she stared at that door, she heard somebody whisper, "You don't belong here. They're going to find you. You're going to get in trouble. Wake up. I know you're sick, but you have to wake up." Well, the whole basement door thing had her going crazy. So at some point, she started looking everywhere for a key so that she could open this damn basement door. And finally, she found a key. And one night, she went alone down there when it was dark with a flashlight. Her kids were asleep. She remembers that. She remembers that her husband was upstairs grading papers, and she remembered that the door didn't have a knob. It only had a keyhole. And as she was putting the key in the hole, her hands were shaking. And as she's doing this, she whispered, "What's behind there?" And she heard her voice, her real voice that she had remembered from the other world, whisper back to her, "You're sick. You're falling deeper into this. You're dreaming. It's been 12 hours. Wake up before you aren't here anymore." And as soon as she heard this, she fell to her knees because all of her real memories came flooding back in. She had forgotten who she was prior. And in this moment, she remembered everything. She remembered her real name. She remembered her real kids, her real family, her real friends. She knew in that moment that this was not hers. All she felt was heartbreak because she knew that she had a choice. She could open that door and go back to her life, or she could stay in this one where she was loved, where she had everything. She knew in that moment that she could not stay there because she remembered her real kids and she could not leave them behind, and she could not stay in a place where she knew was a lie. She said when she opened the door, there was this sound. It was like wind screaming all at once. It was almost like she was being pulled backward through water. She had been asleep for almost 12 hours. No missed calls, no missed time, nothing unusual, but she remembered everything of 7 years, every detail. She still had paint on her hands from being a teacher. She had 2 different socks on, and she had a paper cut. The same exact place that Ava had given her one when they were crafting in her kitchen. And she also had a bracelet still on her wrist that Devin had given her. But she didn't understand, how was this real? How are both lives real? How is she real in that life, and how is she real in this life? She does want to know what you guys think about this, because this is one of the most traumatizing things that has ever happened to her, and she's actually had to go through therapy because of this. And
okay, that's the end of that story. But we're gonna go to the Mr. Ballin one too. This is a good one too. But the crazy thing about that is, because I believe in Christ Jesus. I'm a huge believer in heaven and hell and all of that stuff. Y'all should already know that. Those of y'all who've been watching my channel. But let's say the Bible says that the devil is deceptive, but he also the Bible also says he can transform himself. You know what I'm saying? So he can transform himself into angels of light or into anything that you like. So let's say she was she was asleep for 12 hours or whatnot, in a coma, something like this. That's what it sounded like. And the devil literally provided for her a life that seemed so well to get her to stay. You know what I'm saying? In this illusion state, and not come back to her real life, just so that he can take her soul. So think about it. The voice that she heard to tell her to go back to her regular body, that could have been God. Like, hey, you need to get out of here because this ain't what you want. They're going to come and get you. That's what she said. They're going to come. Who's they? The demons. Because think about it. If she had never, ever went back and she would have stayed, the devil could have been like, gotcha, and now turned into his real form and sent her to hell. What if that happened and she died? Like, she would accept it to stay and then actually died physically in the real world. Crazy. There's many ways to look at it, but this is a similar story right here. These are true stories, by the way. But yeah, man, let's listen to it.
A very spooky house.
Yeah.
Have you got a story that suits the surroundings?
I do. There's a story that I think is one of the best ones I've ever told. So I'm setting some pretty high stakes here. But for reference, I told this one live last year in Texas to a sold-out crowd at the Paramount Theater. And this story had a big reaction to it, because the twist at the end is something else. And it's house-themed. So in 2004... there was this guy named Mitch who was going to a university in Louisiana. And he's a senior, and there's this girl in his class named Kayla, who's also a senior, and he just loves this girl. He wants to date her more than...
Hey, I'm telling y'all don't click off right now. Y'all gonna want to listen to this. I'm telling y'all, if y'all here, you in for a treat.
Anything, and he's tried several times to woo her, but she's not that interested. She's kind of playing hard to get, but he could tell there was something there. Maybe she likes him, and eventually she does kind of acquiesce and say, okay, let's go on a date, and they hit it off. Mitch and Kayla hit it off. They're an item, and they end up graduating. And after graduation, they get married. And by 2006, Mitch and Kayla have bought their actual, white picket fence dream home in Louisiana. And, life was great. They loved their careers. Both of them were very intentional about spending time together on the weekends and really making, their time together as a couple very important. And then by 2007, so they've lived in this new home for a year now, they welcome their first child, their daughter. And then 2 years after that, which puts us in 2009, they have their son. And then they're done at that point. They got the girl, they got their boy. And it's like life couldn't be better. Mitch loves his job. His wife loves her job. They had this thing where every morning the dad would sneak into the kids' bedroom and he'd like spook them to wake them up. It was a playful thing. And they always had, family game nights on the weekend. And Mitch and Kayla made a point to still have those romantic dates, anytime they could. They always got babysitters to spend time together. So this is like it's the American dream in many ways. You have this young family living
High
the dream.
school sweetheart, white picket fence.
That's the idea.
2.5 kids, dog.
That's it. So it's 2009, and Mitch is at this little dream home, and he's watching football. He's sitting on the couch watching football, and it's just like any other day. And as he's watching the game, there's this lamp that's in the back right corner of the room. This nondescript, Target lamp. It's a red lamp, and Mitch, he's seen this lamp a million times. It's in his house, and he's watching football. But at some point, he notices something odd about this lamp, and he looks over at it, and for some reason, the lamp itself, not the light bulb, but the actual physical lamp, like the base, was blurry. And the rest of the room is in focus. There's plenty of light in the room, but the lamp is blurry. And so Mitch, he's looking at the lamp. He's rubbing his eyes to see if there's something in his eyes, but still the lamp is blurry. He goes back to the TV, not blurry. Mitch has good eyesight. This doesn't make any sense. And so Mitch finally, he's worried about this. Is there something wrong with me? And he stands up and he walks over to the lamp, and as soon as he gets up to it, it's still blurry, and he touches it, still blurry. And he's like, okay, I don't know what this is about, but he does the typical, kind of dude reaction, like, whatever.
The male
Forget
denial of medical problems.
Yeah, it's like, I'm probably having a stroke, but whatever. So he turns around and he goes back to the couch and just does his best to ignore the still blurry lamp. And so he's watching the game, he's glancing periodically, but he's mostly focused on the game. And then at some point, towards the end of the football game, the lamp changes. It remains blurry, but out of the corner of his eye, he sees it moving around, and he looks, and the lamp, with having not been no one's touched the lamp at this point, but the lamp is now turned upside down, which is, it's not possible. It's flipped upside down, and now it's blurry. And so now Mitch he's looking at this lamp thinking, okay, huge problems here. There's something wrong. I might very well be having some sort of medical emergency. But for some reason that Mitch just could not place, he couldn't bring himself to call the doctor. I mean, this is a situation where you call the doctor. There's something wrong. And he knew it, but he didn't do it. Instead, he just could not stop looking at this lamp. He's not watching the TV. He's just staring at this upside down blurry lamp. And at some point that day, or that evening, his wife Kayla and his 2 kids, they come home. And the second she comes in, Mitch kind of breaks out of his fixation, and he thinks, I should tell Kayla about this lamp. I'm having a medical emergency. I should tell her. But again, he doesn't. And in fact, he quickly thinks to himself, I can't tell her. I'm going to pretend this didn't happen. And he kind of forgets about the lamp, and he goes and he sees his wife and his kids, and it's a normal night. She is none the wiser that he spent the day staring at a lamp that's blurry and upside down. And, when Kayla came in, the lamp was not blurry and upside down. She's not experiencing this. So that night, regular night, they put the kids to bed, and, Kayla and Mitch, they go to bed too. But then after Kayla had fallen asleep, Mitch is wide awake. He can't sleep. And there's something telling him to go down and look at that lamp. And so Mitch gets up and he sneaks downstairs and he goes to the couch, and, the light is not even on at this point, but even in the darkness, he can tell it's still blurry. It's still upside down. And he sits on the couch and he just stares at the lamp. And all night, Mitch sits on this couch and stares at this lamp in absolute silence. And then in the morning, Kayla gets up, she comes down. It's during the week, so it's a work day. She comes down and she finds Mitch on the couch, and she's like, what are you doing? And he kind of breaks out of it, and he's like, oh, I wasn't feeling well last night. He's lying to her. I wasn't feeling well, so I came down here. And in fact, he tells her, you know what, I feel so sick, I can't go to work today. And Kayla's like, you've never taken a day off from work ever, and you don't seem sick to me. Like, what's happening? And he's like, no, I just not feeling up for it. And so Kayla's like, okay, but she's thinking there's a red flag here, you know, but she doesn't know what it is. And so ultimately, Kayla and the kids, they leave for the day, and Mitch stays home, and he just stares at this lamp all day. He is staring at this lamp. And by the evening, when Kayla comes home, this is like 8-10 hours later, when she walks in the house, all the lights are still off, except for the red lamp. And she sees her husband, who now is not breaking out of his trance. He's sitting on the couch, and he is absolutely focused on this lamp. And when she walks in, she's like, what's going on with you? No reaction. Mitch is fully locked in on this lamp. He's completely unresponsive. And so Kayla is like putting it together that, oh my God, something's obviously wrong. And so she grabs the phone and she calls the doctor to be like, what do I do about this? And she's at the same time kind of yelling for Mitch on the couch. There's no reaction. She's shooing her kids away, go upstairs, we'll deal with this. And so as this is happening, Mitch, who can kind of tell, his wife is on the phone with the doctor, eventually he can't even hear her anymore. She disappears completely. And he's left with just this lamp. And the lamp begins to change for a second time. Now, in addition to being upside down and blurry, the lamp begins to grow inside the room. And so as it's growing, it's taking up more and more of this field of vision until this lamp is so big, he now is basically consumed by the lamp. And it's at this point that he begins to feel this blinding pain in his head. And he doesn't know where it's coming from. And then he hears a ringing in his ears. And then all he hears is just people screaming everywhere. And it's total darkness. The lamp is gone. And then he opens his eyes and he looks around. And he's surrounded by a sea of people that are all looking at him. And he's on the ground. It's broad daylight. He's not at his house anymore. And he's looking around at this crowd of what looks like college kids. And he's looking for his wife and his kids. He can't see them. And he stands up and he doesn't know what's going on. And as he's yelling for his wife and kids, Kayla, he's yelling for his wife and kids, a police officer comes charging through the circle and he grabs Mitch. And without saying anything, he lifts him up, a grown man, and just runs with him to his police car. And the whole time, Mitch is like, I don't know what's going on here. His head's still he's still got pain in his head. He has no idea where he is. Physically, he has no idea where he is. And he gets thrown in the back of this police car. Obviously, there's some emergency happening right now. And the cop, without saying anything, he hops in the driver's seat and they start speeding down the road. And as they're driving, Mitch just starts saying, where's my wife and kids? What's going on? And the police officer was like, sir, you just hit your head. I'm bringing you to the hospital. And so ultimately, the police officer brings Mitch to the hospital and they end up, he gets treated by the doctors and nurses. But he discovers what's actually happened. Mitch was a senior in college, and he got tackled by a football player, and he hit his head on the ground, and he was unconscious for a fraction of a second, like 10 seconds or something. And in those 10 seconds, his brain constructed an entire life with a wife, with kids, with the white picket fence, the house. None of it existed. He never had a wife. He never had his kids. They're not real. And so he realized what had happened when he was at the hospital, and he had to grieve the loss of people who never existed, and it wrecked his life. He did this huge Reddit post, this Ask Me Anything, where he tried to tell people what it's like to have basically lost your entire family who don't exist. And he said, to this day, he still has dreams where his little son will come running around the corner and he's perpetually 5 years old. And that was his life. And so it wrecked his life and it never existed. It was just a figment of his imagination.
Dude.
Pretty crazy, right?
Bro. What the... Those of y'all who still here who ain't click off, man. Tell me what y'all think about that. That's nuts. But I know for a fact that dreams can feel real. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think, like, to the extent to where you got a whole family, you have to grieve them. And years go by, nigga, y'all buying homes, having kids. Like, crazy to me, man. But this shows you how powerful the mind is, bro. Like, for real. But y'all, if y'all had any experiences like that, y'all put in the comments. Let me know some. Tell me what y'all think about that, man. For real. And all I can say is that, man, that's crazy, man. See you guys next video. Always remember, be safe out there, kings and queens. Let's get it.